So let's begin by connecting with our energetic state. It's a good place to start your meditation. So just establishing a posture of stillness, upright, and just checking in. How are you feeling? What's the energy like in your body? Are you tired or bored? Are you excited or interested, stressed? Just, just kind of acknowledging that, but also really trying to go into your body and feel the state, whatever it is. It might not have a name, doesn't need a name. To say, how do you feel? Even that question can have different meanings, can refer to something physical or emotional. And so this state we're talking about, what I'm calling our energetic state, is kind of a mix of physical energy with a emotional color tone to it, which means that there's a feeling there, and our mood is like an interpretation of the feeling or an expression of it. You could have the same energetic state, but if it was interpreted or sensed or understood differently, you might have a totally different mood from it. In the same way that something like anxiety can be felt more as excitement. Stress can be a kind of engagement, intensity. Calm can seem like boredom or sadness. So just notice what you're feeling and how you're understanding it. And then breathe. Breathe with that. The breath functions to open up or create a kind of space around feelings when we breathe into the feeling. So that means that we sense something, a feeling, and then as we take a breath, we feel how the physical movement itself, the expansion and contraction, interacts with the energy, with the mood. And generally, the exhalation has a releasing or calming effect. The inhalation has an opening or releasing effect. So both inhalation and exhalation can be a kind of release, just in different directions, different sort of expressions of release. So we're really trying to get to a very elemental level of experience. It's really beyond words or descriptions. And if you're not feeling that, if you feel like that description or guidance isn't quite connecting or you can't get there, just try being with the movement of breath and the sensations of breath. Keep it simple. And if you're swept away or keep being swept away by thoughts, that doesn't have to be a problem. It's important, in fact, not to make it a problem in the sense of judging yourself or thinking you're doing it wrong. Thoughts are an inevitable part of our meditative experience. So we want to be friendly with thoughts, not be in a relationship of conflict. Well, that means noticing thoughts and coming back to the breath, coming back to the body, to the maybe to that elemental experience. And if the thoughts are repetitive and really strong, maybe to just look at what the lure is. Just acknowledge, oh, that idea, or that plan, or that fear really has its hooks in me. And see if you can breathe with that. My breath and this thought. Oh, that's what that thought feels like. Notice what's changing. Particularly notice if your energetic state, the one we began the sitting by noticing. See if that's changing. See if something else comes into your awareness, like a sound or other sensations. So we have a kind of a split awareness in a sense. We have a central object, the breath, but then there's a certain openness that allows our attention to move to other things that attract us or that become strong. And there's also this kind of tracking of thoughts just to notice when we really get lost. This practice is a bit of a dance. There's kind of a part of us that really wants to land and stop. And that can happen. But oftentimes it's more of a flow, and we have to stay attuned to that flow. All right. I hope that was helpful or pleasant for people. So yeah, I thought it just sort of made sense for me to talk a little bit about retreat and some of the I don't know, just some of the experience, maybe even some insight. Um, but it's interesting because my first long retreat back in 1981, it was at Insight Meditation Society, and at that time the teachers were a little more sort of experimental, and they took uh, about after the first few weeks, for quite a while, for about a month, because it was a 3-month retreat, they just got rid of a schedule, essentially, and they just had everybody sit on their own schedule. I mean, they had certain group sittings, like first thing in the morning, and then in the evening before the Dharma talk, maybe one or two others, but mostly you were free to meditate in your room or go outside if the weather was good, or sit in the meditation hall, or sit anywhere you found a place. But the idea was just practice. Just be responsible for your practice. Don't wait for a bell. Don't you know be more so self motivated. Um, and I think that was a really good experience because it really gave me a sense of independence as a practitioner. So very early in my practice, I started to do self-retreat. And I would typically, like, when I lived in Southern California, I would go to Damadina, which is Ruth Dennison's center, and she just had a bunch of shacks out in the desert, in the high desert, and in Joshua Tree, and you would just go and stay in one of the shacks, and then you would go to the main house for the meals, and you just sit on your own schedule. So, and of course, I've done many group retreats as well, but and they're different. And the nice thing about being on your own is that sort of control. And okay, I can sit longer if I want to. My sitting's not going to be interrupted by a bell. Or if I'm just really feeling restless, I can shorten my sit a little bit, maybe do more walking meditation. Or if I want to do some study of my own, I don't have to feel guilty about the fact that I'm reading a book. Um, so I like that part of it. Um, and it does sort of suit my independent and even sort of rebellious streak. But and the last time I was on retreat, actually, it was interesting when I went to put uh, a an auto reply into my email. It was in there from last February. It was almost the same date. It was February 20th of last year when I went to Vajrapani, and I looked at the date. I was like, wait, how did this get in here already? And then I realized, oh, it was and that was a self retreat I did last February. So right before the pandemic. Well, actually, we didn't know it started. Um, so it's been a year since I've done any extended practice, and this was even pretty short, 5 days. But so all I did this week, I live with my wife, and we have a big enough house that I have my own office, and I can just come down here. So I get up in the morning, and I'm not a very early riser. I would just, but I would just get out of bed, throw water in my face, brush my teeth, because brushing your teeth is a really good way to energize yourself, because energy is really a key to retreats. So just brushing your teeth and water in the face, still in my pajamas, go into my meditation space and sit for an hour. It's nice to go right into meditating first thing in the morning with as little interruption as possible, because it doesn't give your mind time to really get going too much. But you have to be careful that you don't, if you just sit up in bed and start trying to meditate, it can be hard because you're sort of like not really fully awake. So you have to make sure you're fully awake, but then just kind of like settle right away. So I like that. So then I would shower and eat, and then I take a walk. There's a walk I used to take with the dog who died about a year ago, but I just still take the walk. I call it Nikki's walk. So I walk around the neighborhood, and I kind of see nobody's outside. It's like, I don't know where everybody is, but it's like, oh, that's so and so's house. But I take this like 10, 15-minute walk, come back home, and then sit for an hour, then walk 45 minutes. Usually I do shorter walks. So so walking meditation, and we have a deck. So it's a perfect place for walking meditation, and then sit for another hour. So basically that's my morning. And so walking meditation outside in an urban environment is really interesting too, because if you're used to retreat centers, it's very quiet. Maybe there's a bird, or, you know, there's some other people walking, but here I'm walking, and both our neighbors have dogs. So the dogs will start yapping at each other on either side. There are certain construction sites where apparently they keep the trucks in reverse all the time. So you're constantly getting the beep, 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 beep. And we live, I think it's a couple miles from BART, but I hear BART pretty loud. And then when BART stops and they go by, then I can hear the freeway, because everything travels up. We live not in the hills, but in the foothills. So everything kind of comes up. So it's just all this sound, and then the birds, you know. Uh, and so sometimes I'll just stand there and listen. It's a really great practice, because it's just so much going on that if you're not, annoyed by it, then your mind is really filled, and you can just go that, this, that, other, that. Oh, I hear that, hear that. And one day we have a plum tree, and they're in bloom right now. This amazing thing about the Bay Area is that February is when all the things that happen in April and May on the East Coast. So we get all the cherry and plum trees in bloom. And so there were these two birds, and there's something on those plum trees that they're eating. And I'm just watching them for like 5-10 minutes, just like, jump and find their thing. And uh, a little piece of flower drifts down, and they're chewing, and then they jump up to another thing. Just watch that for a while. And then you start to notice, when you're looking at the birds, you realize, oh, wait, there's a bunch of bees and other things that are there, right? So it's the wonderful thing, as your mind gets quiet, you start to be able to get absorbed in these things. And I know all you people who've been on retreats, many of you have experienced these things. And when it first happens to you, it's like, wow, this is really a trip, man. Like, wow, I can't believe it. Now for me, it's just like, oh, this is sweet. This is just sweet. I'm just enjoying this. And then I'm like, okay, now I'll walk some more. And then you walk back and forth some more. It's just the remarkable simplicity. So several times I took walks. Yesterday, I took a walk up into the hills after lunch. You know, and every little thing becomes sort of interesting. The construction workers, and they just opened up a fire hydrant, and the water is flowing down the street, down the hill. And it just looks like, wow, that's just like wild looking, to the way the water's flowing. And why is it breaking off like that? And then I passed a house that had a Blue Lives Matter flag on. I was like, this is Berkeley, man. Like, what are you doing? But, it was my mind, right? So, and then there were some kids. I was like, oh my God, kids. You're just like, your heart is open, and you realize, oh, my heart is really open. Like, I'm in love with those kids. Like, oh, that mother and her daughter who are walking their dog. Like, oh my God. This is the beauty of it, right? I mean, it's not the point of meditation practice, but it's so, it's one of the things that gets you really hooked on it, because it's showing you life. It's showing you life that you miss ordinarily. And that was my first real kind of takeaway from my first retreat was, I have missed a whole lot of life. At that time I was 30. Thought for 30 years I never noticed any of this stuff. Like, wow, like I've been missing a lot. Like, this really reveals the world. And 5-6 hours a day of sitting in one posture, the back starts to just be in pain and you're trying to, oh, let me try a different chair. Let me lie down for a while. So the body gets, uh, our bodies aren't meant to be still for such long periods of time. Um, the thing though, I did kind of want to talk a little bit about is energy, um, and how one of my kind of ways of seeing retreats, one of the ways I believe they work is about balancing energy. So when we start a retreat, we're we're in our life, our daily life, 21st century energy, which is full tilt, right? And we stop, and you find this, every day you meditate, you find this, you find it's like your mind is still moving, and your body is still, and it's like you're still rushing forward. So you spend a lot of time in the beginning of retreat trying to settle, but very quickly, this happens remarkably quickly. A heaviness and fatigue can come on. The first day or two can be just like overwhelming, like I'm just nodding off or just a blurriness. The mind is, and it's this strange transition. And I always think of it as a kind of birthing, a kind of, butterfly emerging out of this cocoon, this kind of enclosed cocoon of existence, and this kind of like, like I don't think it's really easy for a butterfly to emerge. It's like birth, right? Anyway, there's this kind of transitioning, and then hopefully, the energy starts to get balanced, and you start to realize how much of your mental state is related to your energetic state. When you're too relaxed and too calm, the mind gets foggy. But when you're really energized, if you I don't drink coffee, but if you drink coffee, it's like, okay, I'm awake now. I won't fall asleep when I'm meditating, and but nothing. There's no peace in it, right? So we're trying to get to this place of like alert and relaxed, which is like half of the instruction, right? When you give meditation instruction, be alert and relaxed. Well, aren't those two different things, separate things? How do I merge them? So the practice, and one of the things that I often like to say is mindfulness has a naturally energetically balancing quality to it. So if you are mindful for extended periods of time, your energy will tend to get balanced. But there's something else that happens that's very strange. You'll be nodding off half the day, and then when bedtime comes, there you forget how to fall asleep. And it's interesting, maybe it's not surprising, you've been, like, working on calm all day, and and really, even when it doesn't seem like you're calm, you're a lot more calm and relaxed than you are in your ordinary daily life. You're not building up stress, and so you think, "Oh, it's time for bed," or "I'm sleepy," but then for me anyway, you get in bed and it's like, I'm not really sleepy, I'm tired. Now, I saw an article, recently they send me these people send me annoying things from time to time about the negative impacts of mindfulness, and really they're mostly talking about retreats, and this is my old nemesis, Willoughby Britton. Uh, which that's a long story. I'll tell you another time. But she's a researcher at Brown. I think she's still at Brown University, who does research into the negative impacts of meditation retreats, and which is good. It's good to see, and it's good to understand. And I was thinking about that. That one of the things that can happen, people have I guess they call, I don't know if they're psychotic breaks, but they call them kind of breaks where people kind of have a real, like, some kind of bad thing that happens on retreats, maybe dissociation or something. Some of you professionals out there might be able to name it better than I. I'm somewhat want to avoid, uh, diagnosing it or labeling it. But I think that probably I do have one friend, one student who had a kind of break like this, and it was because she wasn't sleeping on the retreat. And so one of the things I can recommend, if you're on retreat, you're having trouble sleeping, just lie down, turn out the lights, close your eyes, and lay there. Or is it lie there? Lie there. I should know. Lie, lay, lane. Lie there for the amount of time that you would ordinarily sleep. And you will drift in and out, maybe. Like typically, and this week, like I was awake for an hour or two every night, at different times. I wake up and I've learned, just lie there and breathe, feel your body. I'm not like trying to, okay, I'm going to meditate, but just kind of lie there, relax, um, and then, eventually you fall asleep and you're rested. But if you get into a mental struggle about it, like, oh my God, I need to fall asleep. If I don't sleep, I'm not going to be able to meditate tomorrow. Like, the thing to remember is, like, who cares if you meditate tomorrow? You're on a retreat. Do whatever the hell you want to do. Nobody's paying you for this. You're paying for this if you're, at a retreat center. So if you have trouble sleeping, just, rest and sleep in. If you don't fall asleep till 5 a.m, ignore the first bell, ignore the second bell, ignore all the bells. Just, it's your retreat, take care of yourself. So I think that a lot of the struggles we get into on retreats are about what we think we're supposed to do, what we think is supposed to happen, what we want to have happen. And, so you have to is not a good way to put it, but you kind of learn the art of retreat. And a lot of this week was pretty miserable. And I was really like, I'm not enjoying this. Why am I doing this? Which, if you don't ask that of yourself during a retreat, something's wrong. If you don't at some point go, why did I come on this retreat? Then something isn't working. It's an inevitable question. But of course, you do kind of transition into something else, and some peace comes. So I'll talk about one of the other challenges, and then I'll open it up for people. There's a thing they call yogi mind, which is a funny term. They don't use the term yogi much anymore. When I first was on retreats, they would call us, we were all yogis. Now it's more like you're a retreatant. Anyway, yogi mind is kind of when you get obsessed with something and blow it way out of proportion. So like, you have a sensation in your body, and an hour later, you've got a cancer diagnosis in your mind, and you're like, you need to go to the emergency room. I mean, I've literally had them take me to the doctor on a retreat. So I just want you to know, like, literally, I was at a retreat at Kilfronsdale just a few years ago, and I was like, I need to go to the doctor. I forget even what it was. Like, I had a sore throat or something. I don't know. And they drove me there, and we went in, and I was like, oh shit, I can't be here. And I just turned around and we left. It was classic. It might have been embarrassing. I don't remember. But so, I diagnosed myself this week. I definitely have prostate cancer, or maybe bladder cancer, or could it be pancreatic cancer? One of the above. Or I might just have a hernia. I don't know. I'm dying for sure. But yogi mind, I finally figured out what yogi mind is. It's what you would call wrong concentration. Your mind gets, because when it's happening and you're spinning out, you think, God, I've lost all my concentration. Like, I can't focus. You're focusing. That's the problem, is you're too focused, right? You're focused on the wrong thing. You're focused on a delusion. you're focused on something non-productive, you know. And so when I've realized that, I'm able to like shift that more easily, because I used to think, oh, my concentration's bad, I need to concentrate. And it's like, no, I need to shift my focus. I need to shift my focus to the, the appropriate object, the breath or my body or my energy. But yogi mind is like inevitable. And, another kind of version of yogi mind is when you get creative. And I tend to get creative. And so I have a new creative project. I might tell you about it. It's but maybe not tonight. But it's not a book or anything. It's not Dharma related, So, but a lot of my ideas, I've written a lot of songs and things like that, and come up with a lot of ideas. And you're not supposed to do that, and it's like one of the lures, because it's like all of a sudden, you're in this mind, this, this really good version of your mind, right? Like you've been there before from time to time, but wow, you're really in it right now. And it's like, ooh, wow, this is fun to play around in here, That's why people write poetry. Like Inquiring Mind, the Buddhist magazine, they said, yeah, whenever there was a long retreat at Spirit Rock, right after that retreat, we would get a pile of bad Dharma poetry, Everybody's a poet on a retreat. I mean, let's face it, everybody's a poet. You can't help but like, it's a poetic experience. So I don't know if this is wasting your time on a Friday night. I hope it's just sort of gives you some thoughts about retreats. So one of the risks of self-retreat is that you always cut it short because you can. So I'm always like, okay, well, I'll practice until Sunday. And then about Thursday, I'll be like, Saturday will be good enough. And then like Friday night, I'm like, I think I'm done. So I sort of stuck it out. I mean, I was thinking about Saturday, but I was like, no, so, but I had a couple things I had to do today. So it was actually a good transition. I went and got some blood drawn this morning. And that was like a very neutral experience. Out in the world with not a lot of energy around it. And then I had a conversation with a monk in Germany this morning. And that was a great kind of, we talked for like an hour and a half. So that was like a good, like coming out of retreat, but in a very Dharma themed way. So thanks for listening. And I'll just open it up if anybody wants to ask any questions or say anything. This was not meant to be like a total summation of what a retreat is like, just sort of some highlights, lowlights, and maybe psychedelic lights, strobe lights, that would be it.
A very mundane question,
Yes.
Kevin. What do you think is going to happen with the Vajrapani retreat this year?
I don't think they're going to open this year. I think they could, but they seem to be pretty hesitant to do anything because it seems to me they could have their cabins open for individual retreats right now if they wanted to. So, but I'm suspecting that they're not going to. They just don't. We'll see. I've been suggesting Spirit Rock ought to have a vaccination retreat where anybody who's been vaccinated can come on the retreat, but nobody's going to, they're not going to. The thing is that Dharma centers, I think, feel a special responsibility to be non-harming. So any kind of risk at all is kind of like, but it's a good, I hope that we have it. Yeah.
Do you think you'll do it an at-home retreat if we don't actually go to Vajrapani?
I think I would have to, because it already, I'm like, wow, we had the 2 retreats. We did the Southern Dharma and Vajrapani in successive months, really. And now it's like nothing. And then so I'm feeling like there should be something offered. But it's a big undertaking. So
Yeah, I know.
yeah,
But I
but
appreciate it.
yeah, no, it was great, very successful, and well, for sure we'll do it again. And if I could just make the world stop bothering me, I would maybe make that a regular yearly thing. But I have these
Mm,
responsibilities and stuff. But or if other people would do it for me, that would be good, and I could just
mm.
like visit. Roberta, are you waving?
Yes, can you hear
Hi,
me?
I can.
Oh, wow. The great mute dynamic thing, or not to mute. I just wanted to ask you, because I've been in a state of grief over a situation with a very close family member who has gone off into a kind of QAnon world.
Ugh.
Although she doesn't like Trump at all, it just has to do with having viewed videos and having been swayed by someone she was very influenced by, and she's very isolated here living in Sonoma County, and
Ugh.
it has broken my heart.
Hmm.
And I have no way to convince her to do the research. She
Yeah,
feels like I'm going against her belief.
yeah,
And this belief has sprung out of this dark web,
yeah,
it's one of the most bizarre things I couldn't even have imagined this.
yeah.
I mean, during the 60s and 70s, I guess there were cults that people became, but there's a similarity. And
There it is. Yeah.
I mean, my mind is calming down. I'm glad I found you because this is much easier than Zen, I want to tell you.
Oh, then Zen.
It was getting to be I was really feeling often anxious that I wasn't doing things right.
Oh,
I love this.
oh,
And
good.
because of my recovery stuff, it, my sensitivity, my sense that I want to feel safe,
Yeah,
basically safe.
yeah.
But what is it about? Have you heard of people, how they might I've heard that one needs to still practice loving kindness with your family member or friend who has gone off into this other world.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes. She's not speaking to me currently, and that's very hard because we were very, very close. I mean, up and down, a little bit tumultuous relationship at times, but always coming back to check in with each other, a lot going on in her life. And I just published a book I'm very excited
Oh,
about.
congratulations. Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you.
I think I saw something about that on
Yeah.
Facebook. Yeah.
Lost Angels Coming Home,
Ah,
kind of a memoir, fictional story combined.
beautiful.
I wondered, what would you suggest as an approach to continue, I guess, to be loving, I suppose. I mean, well,
I,
what else
I
is there
would,
to do?
I would, my approach would be to send love from a safe distance.
Yeah,
I just,
boundaries, huh?
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, relationships are impermanent, people change, people get divorced, and there's no point in trying to hold on to things that don't work. And if she comes back, and she may come back to her senses, because I think a lot of people have gotten lost during this year. Many, many, many people have, and, and this is one of the ways they've gotten lost. And I think it's interesting because you were hinting at this because it's something I was talking about recently, that the people who started conspiracy theory thinking in our country were the counterculture. It was the left. It was the
Yes.
progressives, right? The
Yes.
the Trilateral Commission and and
Right.
all this.
And
You
don't
know,
trust the government.
right, right,
All
yeah,
of
right. And so so you had the weathermen and so and I think it's very interesting. I think a lot of the people who are of our age who have transitioned into QAnon, you go back, and a lot of them probably were hippies or, sort of in that world. And they're kind of like, you're out in the woods, and after a while, it just like transitions into another kind of paranoia.
Yeah.
Because hating the FBI is something that was always agreed on from both sides. So
Is it like we have an archetype that we need to explore and fulfill that I guess it's like I don't know what it is. It's like some kind of attraction, allure that we just get
Yeah.
pulled into.
And the thing is that challenging the mainstream narrative and mainstream culture is a very reasonable thing to do. It's right. So that's not the problem. Is that people look for magic, and they actually make things more complicated. I mean, the idea of Biden stealing the election is a great example of like that's like way too complicated. Occam's
Yeah.
razor. Are you familiar with Occam's razor? The
Yeah.
idea that always look for like, what's the simplest, most reasonable explanation for something, rather than trying to make it complicated. And conspiracy theories, people like to, they like to believe that there are mysterious forces at work. It's also sort of like tied in with sci-fi, and you know what I mean? It's like a whole like mentality. But yeah, in terms of a relationship, I just think you have to let it go. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, but that's what
No, I hear that.
if somebody started talking like that to me in any circumstance, I would nod and then get away from them as quickly as possible, without taking care not to agitate them further.
That's a really good perspective. And actually, because it's so painful to me and difficult to be with, you're right. It's why be in that suffering?
There's other friends to have. There's lots
Yeah,
of.
I mean, if and when this person wants to recognize my sensibility, as it were, I mean, that's important in relationship. One is not without the other.
Yeah, and and it is. I mean, in the context of this group that's sort of focused on recovery, it is a kind of addictive behavior because it's obsessive, and it's destructive.
Yes.
And it's diluted, which are three aspects of addiction.
All of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was such a perfect thing as a
Yeah.
paradigm to,
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I'm doing much better than I was a few weeks ago, when it was really painful for me. Really, I couldn't even leave my apartment.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's awful.
Yeah, close family member. So my daughter, as a matter of fact, who I'm very close to, and it does break my heart.
Yeah.
But I also recognize, somebody said something today that Mother Teresa put on Facebook, and I looked at this as, I like Facebook for these reasons, that there's wisdoms that come up that are just perfect in the moment, that you teach your children to have their dreams and their path. And when it turns out it's not your dream and not your path, one must accept that.
Yeah.
Acceptance is, unfortunately, there are some things in life that are really, really challenging, but it's also best to stay out of it being challenging and just as you said, let go and move on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. That was very deep of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Roberta. Nice to see you here.
Too.
And it is 8:03, and I have not seen the Warriors all week, which was a true renunciation. Although I did keep track of their scores through my daughter, because I never cut off my daughter, so she contacts me. But
Raymond blew it.
I saw the game where he blew it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
That was before this week.
Yeah.
I was very angry with Draymond.
Yeah, I think he was
But his,
upset with himself too.
yeah, I'm sure he was. We all make mistakes.
Yes, we do.
Wasn't the playoffs. So, but
No.
anyway, since I've rambled on, to go Heat. Oh, Sanjeev, dude, really? Okay. Well, we're open to all teams here. So that's fair enough.
In fairness to me, you opened the door.
I did. I did indeed. And, you're in Miami, so it's not like you're, in Missouri and you're rooting for the Heat. You have a legitimate reason for rooting for them. If there's one more question, I am open to, because I realize I haven't had taken a lot. And I saw a hand go up just as I flipped screens. Yes, Cheryl.
Hi,
Hi.
Kevin. I guess I've been struggling. I'm in AA. I've been sober for 4 years now, and this past year, only with Zoom AA meetings,
Yeah.
is getting really tiresome.
Uh,
And I am, I'm tired of reading the 12 and 12, and I'm really tired of the big book. And I'm trying to find the balance, because there are people that are in AA that are, when you're talking about cults and you're talking about, they talk about these books and these writings as if, that they were written, by God. And, I think I was trying to talk to my friend today about it's healthy to question things, and it's healthy. But I want to stay sober, and I do want to stay connected with the people, in the fellowship, because I've made a lot of really strong connections.
yeah.
So I don't know if other people are having that same experience, but the Zoom meetings are really getting to be, there's just not anything to share on some of these things anymore.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, thank you. And my first reaction just is to say that the problem you're having is why I'm here. And it is my job to help people to have another outlet, because I am definitely not someone who's like, oh, just stop going to AA, and come and sit with me. But I think because all the things you described, all the positive things, especially the connections and just this general support, those things are really important. But for many of us, we also need like another version of reality, kind of. And as you said, like, it's okay to question or like think about other ways of understanding what it means, removed our shortcomings or something, that when you're in a very sort of fundamentalist version of AA, it doesn't feel like there's much room for, alternative ways of thinking, even though it says right there in the steps, as we understood them. And what it means is as each individual understood him, not as we as a group have all agreed this is how we're going to understand it. So yeah, and certainly Zoom must die. It's going to be really interesting what's going to happen, because there's the great thing is that there's people from around the country here tonight, and I love that. But once people can go back to so-called normal life, are they going to really want to come here on Friday night? Maybe. But yeah, I really hope that we all get vaccinated and we all get safe together. And Canada, thank you. I like that
And
with
New
a small
Jersey.
c. The humble Canada said it with a small c. But don't tell me the score. Geez, that's not fair. Geez, I was going to start from the beginning. I have it recorded.
I'm sorry.
I forgive you, Pam. A lot of time, and I like to start from the second half.
Did that to me today too.
What?
Sorry. Draymond is being good tonight.
Well,
Now
and
he knows this.
for those who have been keeping track, now you're getting me off track. Here I was trying to be spiritual, but you know,
I'm sorry.
the Warriors have not won 3 games in a row. Everybody knows this. And they have not lost 3 games in a row this year, but they've won the last 2, right? So if they win tonight, they break that streak. So they're probably going to lose.
No,
Anyway, what was I saying?
I'm sorry.
It's totally okay. I'm laughing. This is all fun. Oh yeah, Zoom.
About Zoom dying.
So yeah, we need to hug. We really need hugs. That's all I can say. We need a lot of hugs. It doesn't work in. Nice try. You're just gonna bang your head and then you're gonna be like, no, that didn't work. Yeah. All right, you guys. I hope this wasn't a complete waste of time. I'll be back to normal soon. Maybe. And we'll get back to step 7. Because the next section I was going to get into is called Who Am I? So it would be definitely a deep dive on Tuesday. All right. Peace.
Thanks, Kevin.
Blessings.